In the twilight years of the 19th century, one man stood astride the American economy like a colossus, his name synonymous with wealth, power, and ruthless domination. John D. Rockefeller, the founder of Standard Oil, had built an empire that controlled over 90% of the nation's oil refining capacity. He was the richest man in history, a titan of industry whose reach extended from the boardrooms of Wall Street to the kerosene lamps of every farmhouse in America. But his empire was built on a foundation of predatory pricing, secret rebates, and brutal corporate warfare, a reign of monopoly terror that finally provoked the United States government to take the most dramatic antitrust action in its history. The year was 1901, and the decision to break up Standard Oil would become the defining legal battle of the industrial age, creating the template for how America would regulate its economic giants for the next century. Rockefeller's rise was meteoric. He had started as a humble bookkeeper, but he possessed a ruthless, almost fanatical belief in efficiency and control. He had eliminated his competition by striking secret deals with the railroads, securing preferential shipping rates that his rivals could not match. He would buy them out, often at a fraction of their worth, or he would undercut their prices until they were forced to sell. He consolidated the entire refining industry into a single, massive trust. He set up the Standard Oil Trust, a board of trustees that controlled the stock of dozens of companies, essentially centralizing the entire industry's decision-making power in a single room in New York City. This structure was a legal fiction, a way to circumvent state laws that prohibited a single corporation from owning assets in multiple states. For years, the public had tolerated Rockefeller's dominance. The oil he provided was cheap and reliable, and he was a generous philanthropist, funding the University of Chicago and medical research. But the resentment against the trusts was simmering. Progressive journalists, or muckrakers, began to expose the ruthless methods of Standard Oil. They published stories of bribed politicians, crushed competitors, and families ruined by Rockefeller's economic warfare. The public sentiment began to shift. The law, however, was slow to catch up. In 1890, Congress had passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, a vaguely worded law that declared monopolies illegal, but had been used far more often to crush labor unions than to break up monopolies. It was not until President Theodore Roosevelt, a man who believed that trusts were a threat to democracy, took office that the full force of the law was brought to bear on Standard Oil. Roosevelt, who famously called himself a trustbuster, directed the Justice Department to file a lawsuit against the company under the Sherman Act. The trial was a spectacle. It dragged on for years, a mountain of legal documents and testimony. The government argued that Standard Oil was a monopoly that used unfair practices to stifle competition. Rockefeller, then in his early 60s, was forced to testify, a grueling ordeal where he often claimed he couldn't remember details about his own company's operations. The verdict came down in 1911, a decade after the initial legal actions began. The Supreme Court, in a unanimous decision, ruled that Standard Oil was indeed an illegal monopoly and ordered its dissolution. The company was broken up into 34 separate, independent companies. The most famous of these were Standard Oil of New Jersey, which became Exxon, Standard Oil of New York, which became Mobil, Standard Oil of California, which became Chevron, and Standard Oil of Ohio, which became Sohio, eventually part of BP. The breakup was a watershed moment. It was the first time the government had successfully dismantled a massive industrial empire, sending a shockwave through the business community. The decision was not just a legal victory. It was a philosophical victory for the idea that competition is essential for a healthy democracy. The breakup didn't destroy Rockefeller's wealth. He still held significant stock in all the successor companies, and the value of his holdings actually increased as the competition between the new companies drove innovation. But the victory was a warning shot. It established the precedent that no corporation, no matter how powerful, is above the law. The Standard Oil breakup remains the gold standard for antitrust enforcement, a reminder that the pursuit of profit, when unchecked, can lead to tyranny.